two earthquake swarms happening at the same time in Nevada in that mysterious Walker Lane area that will cause, and listen to this, Nevada to be oceanfront. You hear me right, oceanfront. Not California, Nevada will have oceanfront. Why? You have to listen to this. Of course, it won't be oceanfront tomorrow, but what's happening there is causing this. So not tomorrow, not next year, not in our lifetime, but geologically speaking, a new coastline could eventually cut far inland through the American West. And the fault zone that could help make this happen is shaking again right now at two locations. Earthquake swarm, this is the Walker Lane. And today, what's happening there today? We're looking at two earthquake swarms, one near Alamo in southern Nevada and another near Silver Springs that has been shaken for quite a while already, the La Hontan State Recreation Area in western Nevada. And that quake was first the main quake. We have many quakes. The main shock today, 4.4, but has now been upgraded by the USGS to 4.7. So at first glance, when we look at them, these dots may look like small dots on an earthquake map, but when you zoom out, they sit inside one of the most important tectonic zones in the western United States. That is not the San Andreas fault. That is not the Cascadia subduction zone. Hi, everyone. Hi, earthquake freaks. This one is very interesting for you. But I'll ask you a favor before we dive into this. Could you give this video a like and a hype? Doesn't cost you anything. It helps my channel. Thanks so much. And now you have to hear this. So this most important tectonic zone in western United States is a zone that scientists are saying may one day take over part of the job done now by the San Andreas fault. What? So that's the part that most people do not understand. What is the job of the San Andreas fault other than cause devastation and scare everyone? Nevada is not just shaking randomly. I have to tell you this. Nevada is being pulled, it's being stretched, it's twisted, and it's slowly torn apart by plate motion. Sorry to say that. So if you live in California and you want to move to Nevada to get away from the earthquake risk, think again. And one day, what is happening in Nevada, this process, if this continues for more millions of years, the Gulf of California could extend northwards. California could become a long peninsula, and places like Reno could eventually sit close to a new coastline. I know that sounds insane, but this is not a conspiracy theory. Really, trust me, this is pure plate tectonics. And if you want to know what plate tectonic does so that we're alive, so that we exist, you have to watch this video, because Earth is the only planet that does this. Did you know this? Really, I put it in the end screen. Very interesting. The University of Nevada, Reno, describes the Walker Lane as a broad fault system running from the Mojave Desert up the eastern side to the Sierra Nevada, through western Nevada, through the Reno area, and into northeast California. And scientists tell us that the Walker Lane could become the new plate boundary in about 7 to 8 million years, and that Reno could eventually lie near the coastline of an elongated Gulf of California. Again, not one giant earthquake that will cause this, not one sudden crack, nope, not like Nevada floods tomorrow or something like this. I know this is millions of years of motion, but something's happening there today, right now, when we look at these two earthquake swarms. So the earthquakes that we're seeing right now, of course, they tell us that this system is alive, but we could also get something larger there right now. One of the stronger quakes was reported southwest of Alamo, Nevada, and 4.7. Very shallow, only roughly 6.5 kilometers deep, which is roughly 4 miles. So that is shallow enough for people in the region to feel like really sharp shaking, even if it's not like a major damaging earthquake. And farther northwest, near Silver Springs, that is close to the Lahontan Reservoir, the Lahontan State Recreation Area. There's another swarm going on right now, including smaller quakes around 2.1, very shallow as well, about only 1.4 kilometers. That's less than 1 mile in depth. Now, magnitude 2, of course, is small, but the location really matters, because the Silver Springs area has already been active this month. I've reported about this previously. We had a 5.7 there just a few days ago on April 13th. Same location near Silver Springs, about 9 kilometers deep. That's 5.6 miles. And after that larger quake, the region kept producing a lot of aftershocks. So locals have described dozens to hundreds of aftershocks around the Fallon, Yerington, Fernley, Silver Springs, and Lahontan Reservoir area. And one local report said hundreds of quakes had shaken northwest Nevada since the April 13th event, with many more above magnitude 2.5. So when we see another small quake near Silver Springs, all the quakes are happening today, for example, we should treat it not like an isolated dot. It's part of a stressed region. And here comes the bigger question that now we all have in mind. I know you do. Why is this part of Nevada so active? And to understand that, we need to talk about the Walker Lane again, because most people, they know the San Andreas Fault, they know California is moving, they know the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate are sliding past each other at the San Andreas Fault. But what many people do not know is that not all of that motion happens actually on the San Andreas Fault. A significant part of the plate boundary motion that is happening is actually being transferred inland, east of the Sierra Nevada, into the Walker Lane and that basin and range area, which is a huge, huge area. So the University of Nevada, their researchers explain that while the San Andreas Fault system moves about 35 millimeters per year, that's that much, like 2.5 inches, the southern Walker Lane moves about like 10 millimeters per year, a little less than an inch. And the northern Walker Lane near Reno moves 5 to 7 millimeters per year, so that's even smaller. But altogether, about 20 to 25% of the Pacific North American plate boundary motion happens actually east of the Sierra Nevada in the Walker Lane and in the basin and range area. So that means that the Walker Lane is not just a random collection of cracks. It's carrying part of the same giant plate motion system that is actually driving the California earthquakes. But, here's the but, the Walker Lane looks completely different than the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is more mature, it's more continuous, it's a long, well-developed plate boundary fault. The Walker Lane is younger, it's messier, it's wider, and it's more broken up. We could say it's like a lot of widespread faults in that Walker Lane. So scientists describe it as a broad zone of discontinuous faults, strike-slip faults, normal faults, left lateral faults, right lateral faults, pull-apart basins, rotating crustal blocks, and stretched out valleys. Sounds quite chaotic, but that's what it is. So if we want to say that in other words, the Walker Lane is what plate boundary looks like when it's still being born. Isn't that interesting? The Southern California Earthquake Center describes the Walker Lane and the Eastern California Shear Zone as an integrated system of faults that basically helps to accommodate the Pacific North American plate motion. They also say this zone has numerous active faults, abundant seismicity, and a history of large surface rupturing earthquakes. That is the point that should concern us today. Yes, it will be oceanfront in a few million years, but the large surface rupturing earthquakes is our concern today, and because it has the potential to host more of these large dangerous earthquakes. So that's why when we see these earthquake swarms in Nevada, they matter. Not because every swarm means we have to fear that a bigger one is coming, that the giant quake is coming right away, but they are happening inside this fault system that is right now actively reshaping the Western United States and can cause a big quakes, plural. But we have to separate that in two areas. So the first swarm is near Alamo, not the one in Texas. That is southern Nevada. This is a more remote area, but still tectonically, it's not meaningless at all. Southern Nevada sits within a broader basin and range province. That is a region where the crust has been stretched so much that mountain ranges and valleys repeat across the landscape. Like we have to say, the landscape has wrinkles. So the basin and range area exists because the crust is extending. It's being pulled apart. And that extension creates normal faults where basically blocks of crust drop down and they're forming these valleys that we see there, while nearby other blocks rise up into mountain ranges, right? Sierra Nevada. So when you see shallow earthquakes near Alamo, you are likely seeing, this is what's happening there, brittle crust responding to that stretching and faulting. This is why we see these earthquakes there. And the quake depth is also very, very important. A shallow quake, if we have it at 4 to 6 kilometers, 2.5 to 4 miles depth, that means it's happening in the upper crust. That means it's not some deep mantle signal. It's the solid, brittle crust that is cracking. And when we look at the second earthquake swarm that is happening right now near Silver Springs and La Hontan, it's even more important for the Walker Lane story. This area in western Nevada is closer to the northern Walker Lane system where the deformation becomes very complex. So what we're dealing with there is right lateral motion, similar in style of the San Andreas fault. So it gets broken up and transferred through a wide zone of faults. Some faults slide sideways, some fault blocks drop down, some fault zones rotate like pieces of crust. And instead of having one clean plate boundary, you just get this broad, we have to call it, damaged belt. So that is why Nevada does not just have one big fault that you can point to, like California. The Walker Lane is not just one crack, it is a system. And that system is why Western Nevada has produced powerful earthquakes before and will again, unfortunately. If we look back at history, the region has seen major historical earthquakes, including the 1872 Owens Valley earthquake that is often estimated, listen to this, to be as high as magnitude 7.8 to 7.9. So everyone fears the San Andreas fault could produce something like this. Nope, we could see that in Nevada. Then we have the 1932, that's not that long ago. The Cedar Mountain earthquake in Nevada had around magnitude 7.2 to 7.5. So this earthquake especially helped scientists to recognize that the faulting along the western basin and range was related to the broader plate motion system. So these are earthquakes quite significant, equally as large as what we all fear that the San Andreas fault might be doing. So yes, these small swarms that we're seeing there right now today, they matter. But they matter as symptoms and not necessarily predictions, because this does not automatically mean a massive quake is about to happen. Hopefully these swarms will fade out like most swarms, and most small earthquakes do not trigger something bigger, but one day they do. That's the thing. In a region like this, every swarm is definitely telling us that stress is moving through the crust. And sometimes a swarm is the crust adjusting after a large earthquake. Maybe probably what we're still seeing in the Silver Springs area after the April 13th magnitude 5.7. So hopefully these are not foreshocks, they're aftershocks. But other times, we do have swarms happening because fluids, fault complexity, or nearby stress change make small sections of these faults slip in clusters. And when we're dealing here with the Walker Lane, that complexity is the whole point. Because these faults are not clean and simple, because they're broken, they're stepping, they're bending, they're rotating, and they're also, that's important, interacting with each other. So one small fault has a larger earthquake, could trigger the next one, a little bit like a domino effect, right? So that makes the earthquake patterns that we see there harder to read. But I want to get back to that oceanfront headline again. How could Nevada ever become oceanfront? So the idea is this. Right now, the Gulf of California is already a place where the crust has basically opened up and the ocean has moved in. So that rifting that we see there is tied to that plate boundary between the Pacific plate and the North American plate. So over millions of years, if that plate boundary keeps shifting inland towards the Walker Lane, the Gulf of California could extend farther north. California then would become even more separated from the rest of North America, maybe become an island, right? So it has more oceanfront actually. And the Walker Lane could become a more developed plate boundary. As you remember, I said it's still young. So then the western edge of Nevada could eventually be near a new coastline. That's amazing, right? So researchers from the University of Nevada describe this as a very long process. Will take about 7 to 8 million years, so don't bet on your property values to go up. But they are very clear that this will not happen in one huge earthquake. That's the key, right? So not like Hollywood style. One earthquake, it's breaking up and the ocean's coming in. This is not like one day Nevada will fall into the ocean. This is actually slow tectonic surgery. This is what Earth does. Millimeter, inch by inch, earthquake by earthquake, fault by fault. We can say the West is being reorganized. This is happening right now. These earthquake swarms give us the testimony of that. And the Walker Lane is showing us, basically, we can say, the early stages of a future plate boundary. That's why when we see the two earthquake swarms right now at the Alamo and Silver Springs, they're not two separate events. They're basically messages from a larger region that tells us that the American West is still under construction. So near the Alamo, the crust is shallowly breaking into southern Nevada. Near Silver Springs and La Hontan, the crust is still adjusting right now, it seems, after this magnitude 5.7 earthquake in one of Nevada's most active seismic areas. And then between that is the broader story of the Walker Lane, this young fault system, this complicated fault system, and possibly becoming more important over geologic time. So should you panic right now? No. But should you pay attention? Absolutely. If you live in Nevada, California, or anywhere near the Eastern Sierra, Reno, Carson City, Fallon, Fernley, Silver Springs, or anywhere else in the Walker Lane region, this is earthquake territory. This has to be clear. It's not just California, it's Nevada too. And that is the part that many people underestimate, especially when they want to move to Nevada to get away from some natural disasters. Because whenever we hear the big Western US earthquake, they think like, oh, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Andreas fault. But the Walker Lane has produced equally large earthquakes before, has these active faults, has this ongoing seismicity, is carrying part of the plate motion. That machine there is slowly doing something enormous. So I hope you found this interesting. As I mentioned, check out this video. Absolute crazy disaster that is going on in the US right now with a layered weather pattern that is still ongoing. They have still warnings. Texas, they have declared a local emergency, train derailed, these hail. It's insane, the video footage. So you have to see this. Click here. Thanks for supporting the channel. If you want to fill me up with coffee, link is in the description. Click the join button to support the channel with a membership. You get behind the scene videos of my private life. Thanks for your supers, your comments, your sharing, your hyping, and just for watching. Check this out. I see you there. Bye.